Let's talk about Africa. For a long time, the story you got in school or maybe from that one uncle who thinks he knows everything was pretty simple. It went something like this. Africa was the dark continent. A vast, wild place, no history, no writing, no big ideas, just people in loincloths hanging out in trees waiting for a European explorer to show up with a map and a pith helmet. It's a powerful story, a simple story, and a story that has been used to justify a whole lot of very bad things, but here's the thing about that story. It's a lie. Let's start in West Africa with the Mali Empire. Now when you think of the richest person in all of human history, who comes to mind? Bill Gates? Jeff Bezos? Nope. The answer is an African king named Mansa Musa. This guy, who ruled Mali in the 1300s, was so wealthy that his riches couldn't actually be calculated. His wealth came from Mali's massive gold and salt mines. He had so much gold it was basically like an unlimited credit card from the Bank of Planet Earth. He wasn't just rich. On his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, Mansa Musa took a convoy that was basically a moving city. We're talking 60,000 people including 12,000 slaves, each carrying a solid gold bar, and 80 camels each loaded with up to 300 pounds of gold dust. When he passed through Cairo, he gave away so much gold to the poor that he single-handedly caused the price of gold to plummet, triggering an economic crisis that the city took over a decade to recover from. But Mali wasn't just about the bling, it was a center of incredible learning and culture. Now let's travel south. Deep in the heart of southern Africa lies the ruins of a city that was so incredible, so advanced, that the first Europeans who saw it literally refused to believe that Africans could have built it. I'm talking about Great Zimbabwe. This is a massive city of stone built between the 11th and 15th centuries. Its most famous feature is the great enclosure over 36 feet high and 820 feet long. And here's the kicker. It was all built without any mortar. The stones were so perfectly cut and fitted together that they have stood for nearly 1,000 years. When European explorers stumbled upon these ruins in the late 1800s, their minds were blown, but instead of giving credit where it was due, they came up with the most ridiculous theories you can imagine. They said it must have been built by the ancient Phoenicians. They said it must have been built by the Egyptians. They said it must have been built by maybe even the Queen of Sheba from the Bible. Anyone but the local Shona people. It took decades of archaeological work to finally, officially, confirm the obvious. This was a 100% African creation. At its peak, it was a bustling trade hub, home to as many as 20,000 people. Let's shift gears, head northeast to the Horn of Africa, to a kingdom that was ancient when Rome was still a rising power. This is the kingdom of Aksum, in modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea. Aksum was a major player from around 100 AD to 940 AD. It was a maritime trading giant with its ports on the Red Sea connecting the Roman Empire with the riches of ancient India. They were masters of stone carving and they erected massive single stone pillars called stelae. The largest, the Great Stele, stood over 108 feet tall and weighed an estimated 520 tons. That's heavier than 3 space shuttles. And they carved, moved, and erected this thing nearly 2,000 years ago. Aksum also holds a special place in world history for its faith. In the 4th century, its ruler, King Ezana, converted to Christianity, making Aksum one of the very first Christian kingdoms in the world. This ancient Christian tradition continues today in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. In the 12th century, in a town called Lalibela, a new king wanted to build a new Jerusalem. But instead of building churches up, they carved them down. Okay, so we've talked about the kings, the gold, the giant stone cities. But what about everyone else? It's about the farmers, the artists, the merchants, the families who made these great civilizations run. People weren't just surviving, they were building communities, creating art, educating their children, and living rich, meaningful lives. Crop rotation, terraced farming on hillsides to prevent soil erosion, complex irrigation systems. In what is now Tanzania, archaeologists found evidence of steel production from 2,000 years ago. The Haya people had furnaces reaching temperatures hotter than any achieved in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. They were making carbon steel centuries before anyone else. One of the most persistent and lazy stereotypes about Africa is the visual of the mud hut. It's the go-to image for anyone wanting to portray the continent as backward. The idea is that everyone lived in these tiny, round, thatched roof huts in the middle of a dusty village. And look, some people did live in structures made of earth and thatch. They were practical, cool in the heat, and built from local materials. But to suggest that was the only kind of architecture is just laughably false. As we've seen, African architecture was incredibly diverse. You had the monumental stone fortresses of Great Zimbabwe. You had the soaring mosques and universities of Timbuktu, built with elegant adobe techniques. You had the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, literally carved out of the earth itself. In the Kingdom of Benin, the city was a masterpiece of urban planning. Early European visitors described Benin City as a vast metropolis, with massive earthen walls and a grid of wide, straight streets. Another huge stereotype is that Africa had no writing. The story goes that history was only oral, so nothing was ever really recorded. Again, this is just not true. The Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum had its own script, Ge'ez, which is still used in the church today. In West Africa, the Arabic script was widely used by scholars in places like Timbuktu, creating a huge body of work known as the Ajami manuscripts. And beyond that, there were other writing systems like the Nsabidi script in what is now Nigeria. The reality was a continent crisscrossed by ancient trade routes. The Swahili coast on the Indian Ocean was a melting pot of cultures for over 1,000 years. City-states like Kilwa, city-states like Mombasa, trading with Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. They developed their own language, Swahili, to facilitate this international trade. A blend of Bantu and Arabic. Caravans crossed the Sahara Desert. So why does any of this matter today? It's not just about correcting the history books or winning a trivia night. Knowing the truth about Africa's past has a profound impact on how we see its present and its future. For centuries, the lie of a primitive, historyless Africa was used to justify slavery, colonialism, and exploitation. It created a narrative of dependency, the idea that Africa needed saving from itself. That narrative, that lie, is a heavy burden that the continent is still trying to shake off. It affects everything from foreign policy and international aid to the self-esteem of a young black child in a classroom. When we erase a people's history, we erase their humanity. We reduce them to a caricature. By reclaiming the stories of Mali, Great Zimbabwe, Aksum, and countless other African civilizations, we are not just adding facts, we are restoring dignity. We are showing that greatness, innovation, and complex society are not the exclusive property of any one continent or race. These stories prove that African societies were shaping their own destinies and contributing to world culture long before Europeans showed up. This isn't about being Afrocentric in a way that excludes others. It's about being historically accurate. It's about giving Africa its rightful place in the human story. This knowledge is also empowering. For people of African descent all over the world, this history provides a powerful sense of identity and heritage. It's an anchor. It's the answer to the condescending question, but what did your people ever build? The answer is, we built cities of stone and universities of knowledge. We managed economies and commanded empires. We sculpted mountains and charted the stars.